We now turn our attentions to parabolas that maybe don't have their vertex at 0, 0, just at any general hk. Well, what you see listed first in each case is what would be the general form, the unhelpful form. We'll deal with that a little bit later, but I want you to, at first, we'll look at the standard form, okay? As usual, x minus h, y minus k. But instead of that being a center in the parabola, it's the vertex. Notice that the squared term, the squared binomial, is by itself. Here, the squared binomial is by itself. For p, the coefficient is factored out, and there is a binomial x minus h. Lead coefficient 1. Here, when the y is the linear term, again, lead coefficient is 1. Still, if y is squared, that means it opens either right or left, depending on the sign of p. Again, if x is being squared, it opens either up or down, depending on the sign of p. The focus is still p units away from the vertex in the direction the parabola opens. The directrix is still a line p units away from the vertex in the opposite direction from the focus. And the lattice rectum, otherwise known as the focal chord, still has a length of 4p, and the focus is in the middle of that. Exactly the same, just with a different vertex besides the origin. Alright, so we see our y term being squared. That tells me this opens either right or left. So I turn my attention here to the sign of this number. It is negative. That tells me this opens to the left. The vertex, h and k, h is always with x, k is always with y. So my vertex this time is at 4, negative 1. I will go ahead and plot that, 4, negative 1. There is my vertex. Then we have the focus. Well, the focus and the directrix, and the endpoints of the lattice rectum for that matter, have to do with what p is. Well, 4p is equal to negative 2. P is equal to negative 2/4, which is the same as negative 1/2. Again, I like to think of it in terms of its absolute value. So the focus is a half a unit to the left of the vertex. Alright, so I'm going to go to the left a half, and there is my focus. Well, if I was at 4 and I came back a half a unit, I am now at 3.5, negative 1. Otherwise known as 7/2, negative 1. My directrix is a line in the opposite direction from the focus. So instead of a half to the left, I'll go a half to the right. It is a line. In this case, it is a vertical line. Cannot intersect my parabola. So vertical lines have the equation x equals, I was at 4. I went a half to the right. Now I am at 4.5. So x equals 4.5 or 9/2. The axis of symmetry will pass through the focus and the vertex. So the axis of symmetry has the equation y equals, and it has the same y value that the focus would have, that the vertex has, and that is negative 1. Now to sketch the actual parabola, we think about the endpoints of the lattice rectum. 4p is the length of the lattice rectum. Well, 4p has a length of 2. We take the absolute value of that. So that's going to be 1 on each side of the focus. So from the focus, I go up 1 and I go down 1. I can sketch in my parabola now. That's really nice. I didn't take it all the way to the y-axis because I don't like to not know where it's going to hit the y-axis. It's okay, but that's just a personal preference of mine. Let's label these endpoints. Okay, now I moved away from the focus this time. The focus was at 3.5, -1, and I went up 1. So that puts me at 3.5, 0. I was at 3.5, -1, and I went down 1. That puts me at 3.5, -2. And now we have sketched a parabola that does not have vertex at the origin.